Welcome. My name is Rohit Bedi. I'm part of the MetricStream leadership. And I want to welcome our audience to a very important topic that we'll be taking up in a minute on our panel, which is about quantifying IT and cyber risks in business terms. Very warm welcome to our audience around the world. Morning hours on the Pacific Coast. Good afternoon to our Central Coast and our East Coast and our European colleagues, and a very good evening to our guests from Asia and beyond. With me today are two very important, very luminary, very known members in the industry who've done remarkable things in this area in their careers and in their present journeys at their companies. Let me take the opportunity to introduce to you Diego Souza. Diego is the Deputy Global Chief Information Security Officer at Cummins. Diego has served in similar roles at United Airlines, and he's also played the roles at GE Oil and Gas. Diego, welcome.
Thank you, Rohit, for inviting me here. So I'm very glad to participate and hope we have a great discussion today.
Thank you, Diego. Let me now take the opportunity to introduce to you Manish Tiwari. Manish is very well known in the industry, specifically in his region, but not just in his region, globally. Manish is a Senior Vice President and the Global Information Security Officer for Bharti Airtel. In his past, Manish obviously has a long-standing career at Bharti Airtel. But in particular, what I want to mention to the audience is he's served in some very critical roles in information security. He's been with the Indian Navy for a number of years, and he's also served as the Chief Information Security Advisor for Microsoft Corporation. Manish, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Rohit. It's my privilege to be part of this discussion today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Manish. Diego, let me start with you. Very important topic about quantifying cyber risk. And the topic that I want to start with you is to ask you, when you're presenting cyber risks, cyber IT is the world of ones and zeros. You know, it's a black and white kind of world. Business is a lot of different sort of, 1-0 with a lot of different gray areas. My straightforward question to start with this topic is, in your capacities as an executive, how do you, overcome the challenge of presenting cyber risk in business terms to an executive audience, to a board level audience, that they can understand the gravity and they can understand what to do?
Thank you, Rohit. This is a great question, actually. I would say it's not presenting the cyber risks. I would say it's presenting the business risks, right? So I think cyber today is embedded into the core of the business. So making sure you understand the business operations and how it works, and then convert that into a language that's possible for the board to understand. So I also believe that the CISO role today, it's a bridge between the technology aspect as well as the business side. So you need to understand both sides. So I need to be able to understand the risk on the cybersecurity side and translate into business language for my CFO when I'm talking about like financial impact, how those cyber risks converts into financial impact, branding, or when I'm talking to my CTO, when I have to convert the cyber risk into operation impact. So I need to have that ability. However, I also understand I need to have the inverse. I need to have the capability to understand the business goals and the business model and convert back into cyber language for my organization so they can understand what needs to be deployed, implemented in order to achieve those goals. So I think today is cyber is enabling business. So being able to convert that cyber risk into business language is critical and core for the success of any CISO in any organization.
Let me pick up from the core need that you talked about, Diego. Let me ask Manish. Manish, if you sort of kind of continue that thought, what would you advise to your peers, executive peers, in what does it take to align the IT and cyber priorities with the business goals? What would you advise your peers that they must do?
So I agree with Diego. It's actually very important to be able to translate IT security risks into business risks. But equally important, firstly, I think it's very important for the CISO, and particularly those who have not really spent too much time in the organization, because the transition in the industry is a fairly common occurrence. Is that it's extremely important to understand the ecosystem, understand the environment, spend a lot of time understanding the business. Unfortunately, in my community, we understand cyber risks, we understand the cyber threat part, we understand the technical aspects of cyber risks extremely well. But at times where we fail is that we don't put enough time and energy into understanding the business of the organization. Because if you don't understand the business of the organization, then you will not be able to find the right balance. And a critical activity that a CISO drives, particularly in organizations where audit, compliance, risk management, as well as cyber operations are all part of the CISO's functions, as it is in my case. This whole process of risk management is important because this is the exercise which actually helps you find the right balance between between IT security controls and application of technologies with respect to business requirements. So I think that I would say is extremely important.
Thank you, Manish. So Diego, Manish summarized it, in terms of understanding the business, having, and using this as that important bridge to bring sort of parties together. And the risk is that, is that bridge. Let me just ask you just a quick follow-on question on that. Do you feel that the IT cyber domain has something to learn from the operational side of, the operational domain, the operational risk elements, enterprise risk elements have been there for the longest period of time, and people in those positions have generally been able to, present risk, talk about risk, some quantification. But the need of the hour is on the cyber and IT side. Do you feel like there's something to learn from the other side as well?
No, definitely piggybacking here on Manish's comment, right? Really understand the business side is important, but not only to translate to the business language, the cyber risk, but also to see opportunities to learn. So I had the pleasure to work in different manufacturing organizations, and what is very common on this type of organizations, the lean manufacturing, right? So making sure you can speed the production and keep the quality. So in my organization, I try to apply the same methodology. So how can I increase the cybersecurity, making things faster to support the business need and the business goal, at the same time not impacting the quality of the security service I'm providing? So definitely there are opportunities we can leverage in learning from the business operation side that we can apply within the cyber organization.
So we went from sort of starting with, overcoming the challenge of presenting cyber risks in a manner that the executives or the important stakeholders inside the company can understand, and how do you kind of do that? We talked to Manish about, what's that advice, that nuggets that he would have for his peers on how to kind of put that sort of bridge together, how to harmonize it. What's the most important thing you got to understand? He said, you have to understand the business very well, right? That's when you layer on the risk on top of that. And then Diego kind of supported that with saying, what can we learn from what has happened on the sort of the operational side of it, and how we can apply that. Let me keep going here. And for our audience that is joining us, some of them are pretty knee deep into cybersecurity. Some of them are supporting it, and some of them are important stakeholders and executives in the company that are trying to understand that. So let me start with a very simple question. I'd like to pose that to Manish. Manish, let's take a process. Let's take the payment transaction. It's one of the most common things that's happening in the world, right? And a payment process, and you are one of the biggest telcos, if not in the region, in the world. A payment process can go through myriad number of activities. It has a lot of touch points. How would you sort of look at that process and say, well, here's a process that's going to touch so many different elements. So how do you look at the risk of that process? Is it just in the databases? Is it in the processes? Is it in the transactions? Is it in third parties? How many different things does a CISO team have to take a look at? Let's say that we are taking a look at the payment transaction. I just want to take a look example for the audience.
So Rohit, these are these are not decisions which are taken unilaterally or only by, let's say, one of the CXOs. There are multiple touch points even within the organization. And I think three critical pillars into which I can divide this is, one, of course, is ease of use. The other is, how efficient is the process that's been established. So efficiency of the process, ease of use of the entire process and the journey that you have set up for the customer, and IT risk management from both ends, at the customer end as well as at the company end. And of course, for online payment transactions, we have a lot of industry standards, including if you're facilitating online card payments, you have PCI DSS and a lot of other stuff. But I would say largely these are the three categories that one would. Now, for example, the payments part, you will have the finance team involved very deeply. From the ease or the customer journey, you'll have the customer experience team involved. You'll have the IT, the IT operations team involved, and you'll also have the IT security team involved. And these teams cannot work in isolation; they have to actually work together. The IT security team also has to take, as part of its IT risk management strategy, also has to look at various use cases and possible scenarios of fraud, particularly for financial transactions. Situations of fraud which could happen at the company end in case adequate risk management controls and processes are not implemented. And of course, you have to look at it even from the customer's angle. That ease of use should not be at the cost of putting the customer to additional risk. And I think this is the kind of balance that has to be struck when coming up with any new processes. And let me just sum this up by saying that this is a constantly shifting goalpost. So it's a continuous journey. You have to continuously keep looking at it. You get a lot of feedback from the field, from your own teams, from customers. There could be a situation where some customer experiences fraud. So you have to look at what exactly happened, and is there anything that you can do to improve security even from a customer's perspective at the customer's end. Yeah.
Awesome, Manish. Thank you so much for that. That's one of the most, I have to say, one of the, you summarized it in just literally a few minutes here. One of the best summaries that I've heard. And what Manish talked about for our audience is the balance between the ease of use, which is very easy to kind of pick it up and always focus on that, but the balancing that with the risk and security for the client, and making sure that those three pillars, the risk, security, and the ease of use, are well balanced, is a very important topic. Let me pick that topic and extend it a little bit. And Diego, I want to ask about an area that is becoming important, which is third party. In any company, in any process now, the world that we live in, the ecosystems that we live in, both personally, professionally, there's just an incredible amount of a third-party ecosystem. Therefore, for you, in your position and Manish's position, there's the element of third-party risk. It's not just what you're doing or what your company is doing or your processes, but what your third parties are doing, and then their end processes, their risks. I guess the question here is, somebody in your position, how do you look at the risks of that, and how do you manage that in a way that you can have a handle on it, knowing that you can't control everything, but you got to have a handle on it, and you can't let it affect your company. So how do you have a handle on it if you come to third-party risk?
No, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I think so. In this world, I think you won't find any company that does everything. They're gonna have to rely on core partners, right? So third parties, sometimes even fourth parties, that will deploy pieces and parts of their core product. Uh, as we see customer challenging us to make sure when we are developing our own products, with secure in place, right? Secure in place, make product secure as part of that. We need to also challenge our vendors, right? Our partners to elevate their cybersecurity. I think you can have the most robust cybersecurity organization with all the fancy technologies in place, but if you're not pay attention in the single channel that you have with a third party that maybe is not at the same level of security you are, that will become your weak link in your organization. So there are many ways you can do that. So you can do that through contract requirements. So that's, I think, one of the first things, making sure you including cybersecurity requirements into your contract with your third party. Make sure they are accountable for protecting the data, protecting the environment as they are dealing with you. So you can use third parties as well to perform audits, external audits on those vendors to ensure and evaluate the cybersecurity level of that organization. But it's important to have your own cybersecurity organization for third-party management, right? So to make the ecosystem fluid. So making sure you have clear criteria that you can use to measure the security of your vendors. And even before making a connection, sharing information, you evaluate what is the level of protection they have in place. Because again, you can have the best secure solution in place, but if your vendors, your partners are not at the same level, they can become the weak link in your organization. So making sure your organization does manage vendor properly is important from a contract level to a security level to an audit level. So those are, I think, the three pillars I would include here in this management.
Thank you, Diego. Very, very, very sort of targeted advice. And Diego talked about extending the organization, his own into the third party, using sort of vehicles, whether it's contracts or it is education or whatever, in terms of making sure that the priorities are well understood to the sort of the larger sort of ecosystem. And then he summarized it with the three pillars that he sort of talked about. And that this is a, my view, solid sort of best practice type of model that sort of Diego's talked about. I want to segue that, we're on this topic of ecosystem, and I want to segue into some newer technologies that are available in the world. The world is talking about. I'm pretty sure it's part of your corridors inside your company as well. I'm going to come to Manish here. Manish, we are going into the world of soon into artificial intelligence, into robotics process automation, natural language processing. Let's just keep it there. I guess what I want to ask you is, we know what the advantages are. So I'll place the following for you. We know that we can use robotic process automation, complete automation to do massive amounts of data analysis. But I guess the question for you is, from your vantage point, where do you see the human intervention that needs to be placed appropriately? And then how can we use artificial intelligence in the right way on this topic of cyber risk and the ability to sort of quantify that?
So, Rohit, actually, I'd like to continue where Diego had left on, because it's linked to my answer on how do traditional operations, and what is it that we can learn from that. If you talk about traditional operations or business operations or anything, even if you talk about basic manufacturing, there is a tremendous amount of history and development from people, process, technology that has gone into it. So whenever a business decision has to be taken, you see a huge amount of study that is done, data which is correlated. And today you have a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning that's being applied to help decision making with respect to business. In the field of IT security, this is also catching up, but I guess we are still not there. So we have a very mature organization would have a large number of security or technology solutions in place, and I think one of the areas that we still need to refine and really improve upon is the correlation part. How do we correlate data? Yes, there are solutions which are there. You have new generation sims now, or rather threat intelligence based systems which help correlate and orchestrate data, but we are still not there. So I would say that taking a huge amount of data, the huge amount of threat intelligence, uh, uh, we have still not reached the desired level of maturity. Uh, the other thing that I'd like to point out is that there are a lot of aspects of cybersecurity which I would say still require the human, uh, the human mind when it comes to threat hunting, when it comes to specifically analyzing incidents or looking for some new generation, APT level attacks. So I would say in the field of cybersecurity, the human angle is far from being replaced. We are a long way off. But you touched upon a very interesting term, process automation, RPAs as the industry refers to them. So there is another misnomer that where everything is classified as artificial intelligence. A large amount of optimization of security operations that is happening today, including what we have done in my organization, where we have gone the AI way in a very big way, is that a large number of the large number of processes related to cybersecurity are a simple process automation technique. So there is no machine learning per se that needs to be applied to that. There is a set scenario which requires you to react in a very predictable manner, and all you need to do is then create playbooks. And if you have a great an ITSM tool, you can basically automate a large portion of your security operations, right from incident detection to sort of mitigation. But the holy grail still remains the machine learning part, where you analyze a large amount of data. And I would say that we are getting there, but we are still not there. So, to sum it up, I would say the human angle in cybersecurity operations still remains a very, very critical factor. I would not blindly go by any solution which takes the human angle out for now.
Mhm.
Thank you, Manish. Diego, let me ask you to comment on that. Maybe Manish sort of talked about the importance of the human element still, the power of simple automation, the need for what we can extract from AI, but still ways to go. What is your thought process or your thinking or your observations on the place for robotic process automation and how that plays an advantage, the place for artificial intelligence, and the appropriate place for human intervention? How do those three things kind of come together? What would be the most potent formula for a corporation?
That's a very interesting point, and I agree with Manish comments. I think when we talk about AI, it goes back to that quote, right? Who watched the watcher, right? Is who audited the auditor. So we are relying more and more in AI to make decisions, right? It's the aggregation of data that we are pulling from different sources, putting on a data lake, and we have these analytics tools running on top of that using AI and machine learning capabilities to make decision. I think the automation piece of that is very welcome into the cybersecurity aspect because, as Manish touched a little bit, the correlation is getting there, but we still have a gap in understanding the ecosystem and think about the environment today. So, what is the environment? What is the infrastructure today? So, your infrastructure is just expanding. So, it's not only about your firewalls anymore, it's like where your data flows, is where your identity flows, right? So, identity and data are the new perimeter. So, using AI capabilities to understand the flow, right? Robotics process to gather data, process, and then correlate that information will be a critical part of the future of cybersecurity. So, and business are moving also towards to that in their day-to-day operations, right? So how they can simplify and make things faster using automation. But cyber needs to play on top of that, making sure the integrity of the automation is in place. So making sure there is no violation of the data that could lead to a bad decision to the business.
Thank you for sharing that. So, from Manish's comments on the different places and the importance of human intervention while utilizing some of the new technologies, to a very powerful statement from Diego, who is going to watch the watcher. Couldn't have said it any better. Let me pick it up from there, and Diego, let me keep you on the podium here. And I'm going to pick up from something that Manish said earlier, which is, different things kind of coming into our world, right? We talked about third party. We talked about third party. We talked about AI. So this topic of different things and important things, blockchain. Let's pick up on that. Blockchain in different industries, both yours, Diego, and Manish, and various other industries, is an important topic. Blockchain brings an element of efficiency, it brings an element of efficacy, it brings an element of speed. But blockchain brings risks to both you gentlemen. So the question for you is, while we are embarking on adopting these things, how would you're sitting there as one of the most senior most executives on information security, you're trying to quantify it, and you got to use it. How do you kind of look at that, and how do you look at the risk of that and the ability to quantify it?
Now, yeah, blockchain is a very interesting technology, and to be honest, we are hearing about blockchain for the last 5 years, right? So, and I think the technology is evolving. It definitely will bring a lot of value, not only from a business perspective, when you can do transactions cheaper and more secure, but also there are use cases where we can use blockchain for passwordless approach, right? For authentication, data privacy and data protection is there. I think the challenge per se is not really on the blockchain technology, right? Will be around the usage of the blockchain. So we're going to have to continue to rely on softwares that will use the technology to process, right? Flaws on those codes will be leveraged for cyber attacks. We're going to continue to rely on endpoints, right? Where you're going to have the interface between the end users and the blockchain to decrypt the information, right? In some point, another point where we have to take action. And also, blockchain rely a lot on the asymmetric platform for private and public keys. Key management will be a critical element of that. And if I would add one thing else here, would be the regulation, right? It's very deregulated today. There is no specific regulation for usage of blockchain. I think as we see more governments and more countries, more companies getting into the blockchain usage, we may have some regulations coming up. But then the challenge will be how that regulation will apply across the board, right? So different country, different regulations. So I think that's going to be one of the challenges for me on the blockchain usage going forward. Not per se on the technology, but the usage around the technology.
Okay. Manish, wanted to pick up on Diego and just ask you to comment, maybe a quick comment on this, but I'll pose a specific question in there. So Diego talked about, managing the need for, or the thought process on regulation of this blockchain. Yes, it's important, but we got to think about it. Let me ask you a specific question. Blockchain, the data is fleeting. It's moving from one point to the other point to the other point to the other point. You control one point. You can put all kinds of stuff to quantify the risk in there. But this is a ball that is being kicked from one foot to the other, to the other, to the other, and yet you've got to manage the risk on your side. How do you propose doing that, and what's your advice to your peers?
I actually agree with what Diego has said completely, 100%. The technology is evolving, and it's not so much as an issue with blockchain as a technology, as what needs to be seen as to how it's going to be implemented. Blockchain, these are technologies which are helping run, have helped create, run cryptocurrencies in a very big way, which have become big money spinners. And we have had very, very serious incidents in the recent past where a large amount of investor money has been siphoned off because of issues, either at some compromise at an exchange and so on and so forth. So, what I would like to caution, whether my peers or people in general, is that one, I think we got to be very careful before we pitch any technology as the absolute, God sent solution to all problems. Every solution, every technology has its pros, its cons. Every technology has its limitations. Every technology has its shelf life, and every technology will have weak links, and that's extremely important. And last but not the least, at the back end, the technology is fairly complicated. But what eventually, if you have to, massify this, it has to be implemented in a manner where you again don't forget the ease of use for the end customer, where for him it is oblivious, the core technology that is going in the back end. And and that's about it, because if it is because the strength of the chain is that of its weakest link. And hence I don't think it's correct to espouse any solution as the perfect solution for all of humanity's problems, or of all cybersecurity problems, because there is no perfect solution.
Manish and Diego, thank you for both your comments on this very important topic. And as you can see, for our audience, we, in the limited time we have with our very esteemed audience, we want to be able to pick up some very important subtopics that are part of this quantification in cyber, because these are topics that are hitting the corridors of corporations, and not just in Diego and Manish's role, and their comments. And both of them have sort of talked about kind of how to look at these technologies as not just the one size fits all model. And it's just very refreshing. Oftentimes information security executives are deemed as people who are just taking care of information security. So it's just extremely refreshing when a global CISO like Manish or Diego talks about over and over the focus on the customer, and what does it do to the customer. So that's very refreshing. What I want to do now is I want to maybe ask a couple of questions from the that we've posed from the audience. There's a number of questions. We'll have time for one or two, and I'll combine something, and then I want to go to some final thoughts from our panelists as well. And I'd like to pose a very critical executive question to both of them. But before that, let me ask a question. And Manish, let me keep it with you. I'm going to just give you two things. One that I wanted to ask, and one the audience is asking. The audience wanted to pose this question to you. They said, "Well, in your department, whether it's tens or hundreds of people, they're all like cybersecurity professionals, right? The technical whiz guys and men and women. How do you embed the business speak sort of in that department?" So I'm going to give you that part A, but I'm going to pose the part B to you. The part B is, well, that's your department. But you're not just looking at them, you're also looking at a bunch of your colleagues who are also sitting in significant positions. And let's say there's a difference of opinion. How do you bring them together? So if you can just take a couple of minutes, maybe share that with us.
Sure. On the first question, I think it starts by choosing the right people. Uh, you have to set up the right team. You have to set up people who are open to learning, areas of either technology or of the company business, which is not usually their area of expertise. As you said, I mean, they may be whiz kids, but IT security depends eventually because of the business. If there is no business requirement, then there are no information systems, and if there are no information systems, then there is no information to protect. And I think that is the key fundamental. Are we part of the solution, or are we part of the problem? And we have to be part of the solution in case we have to survive, because if we can't speak the business language when it is required, or speak technical language when it is required, we would fail woefully. So right from the time when people join the organization, they spend We have processes and procedures, starting from AppSec to security operations, every aspect of security. This whole aspect of the approach and culture is that how do we constantly basically get the business and the IT, including the IT risk management team, which is part of IT operations, the CIO group. How do we basically embed them to the extent possible? And that typically happens when there's a new product launch or there's an AppSec issue. Some updates have to be done. That's a time when all the stakeholders get together, get into a huddle, and everybody is encouraged to listen. I think the important thing is listen. If you don't listen, then you don't learn. So that's my answer to the first part of the question.
Okay.
Your second question, Rohit,
Yeah.
sorry, your second question was difference of opinion. I think solving a problem starts by listening to the other people's viewpoints and opinions. So if you don't listen, then you don't understand the other person's viewpoints, and there are always differences of opinion. So, and I won't even call it conflict resolution or conflict management. I would rather call it how do you bridge the gap, and that entire piece is again part of the risk management strategy, because eventually if there is a risk and it becomes a residual risk, eventually you have somebody has to have a sign off in the organization for that risk. So
Right.
and hence you cannot do effective risk management without the involvement of business. And I think
Right.
that
No,
is the
got it.
critical, yes, that is the critical recipe, the magic recipe for eventually bringing everybody onto the table and eventually ensuring that nobody leaves the room till the time there is a resolution and at least some common viewpoint. Yeah.
Awesome. Manish, I could pick up a lot of nuggets in there, but uh, in the time we have, and before I thank both of you, I'd like to ask just a headline answer, and allow me to just ask you to maybe just give us a very summarized two-line view. And here's a personal critical question I want to ask both of you gentlemen in your executive positions. Your CISOs, you have the ability to affect the game of your company. How does a person in your position go from just running business as usual or the expectation of just take care of the security to changing the game for your company, the competitive game for your company, so that your company is that number one leader in that industry? Maybe just a headline answer. Diego, let me start with you and then move quickly to Manish before we end the panel.
I think first of all, you need to understand that security now is a business enabler, right? We are not a supportive function anymore. We are helping the business to enable capabilities, either through their product development with security in place or be able to provide service in open, I don't know, business in different regions. So I think the mindset, if you want to be part of that transformation of the business, you need to make sure you understand the security now is a business enabler and not a support function anymore.
Awesome. And Manish?
Oh, I would say one third of the country basically is our customer, and I'm talking about individual retail, individual customers. So the first and foremost I would basically do is what is it that aligns with my expertise, and at the same time it can be a business opportunity, and thirdly it can solve the problem for millions of my retail customers at a great cost. Uh, is there something from the point of view of cyber risk management that I can do? And I can work with my business team and get the best minds together in the company to take and solve, basically solve the my retail customers, millions of customers to whom I'm directly connected, and help them, sort of either secure their devices or manage their individual risks, because and at a great cost. Because today, and particularly Rohit, as and as everybody is aware, COVID crisis, this pandemic, has made the digital world even more powerful. We are doing everything online, even more so than we were before. And hence, the risks, not only to organizations, but more importantly to individuals, have increased. Uh, I think that is what I would do, in addition to what Diego has said.
Thank you, both of you. Two guests that are, to use Diego's language, are in driving seat in their Formula One cars. And to use Manish's language, the intense focus that he has reflected on the customer, and basically summarizing and saying, I have the power to connect with the client. I want to thank both of you. I want to thank the audience from around the world. Let's do it again on this very important topic about quantifying IT and cyber risk in business terms and how it creates a competitive impact on the company. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Rohit.
you.
Thank you, Diego. Thank you.